Have you ever wondered what secrets hide behind billion-dollar smiles and boardroom doors? They called it a technical discrepancy. He called it a crime hiding in plain sight. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel because I'm about to dive into a true life incident that will change your life and how you handle rejection. At precisely 2:47 a.m., a black sedan sat idling outside a brownstone in Bed-Stuy, its engine whispering against the night. The driver, a man in a charcoal trench coat, wasn't watching the road. He was watching him through a fogged windshield, across flickering street lamps, eyes fixed on a third-floor window lit by the eerie glow of a lone computer screen. Inside that apartment, sweat beading on his brow, 33-year-old Elijah Merrick scrolled through line after line of trading data. What he saw didn't just trouble him, it enraged him. Billions siphoned, skewed, rerouted, and all of it pointed to one inescapable truth. Wall Street had a secret, and Elijah had the keys to its vault. The world didn't give Elijah Merrick a fair shot. It handed him a loaded deck and dared him to play. Born and raised in Southeast D.C., Elijah knew hunger better than he knew comfort. His father had vanished when Elijah was 6, swallowed by the justice system for a robbery he swore he didn't commit. His mother worked double shifts at St. Agnes Hospital, collapsing in a bed each night only to rise before the sun. On weekends, she cleaned houses in the affluent Georgetown suburbs, where Elijah first saw a different kind of life, one of glass staircases, private chefs, and heated driveways. He didn't envy it. He studied it. You don't beat the game by playing it fair, his Uncle Reggie had told him once. You beat it by learning its rules better than the ones who wrote him. Elijah took that to heart. Straight A student, mathlete, top of his class. By 17, he taught himself the basics of the stock market using a cracked iPhone and free library Wi-Fi. But talent wasn't a ticket. When college came calling, the scholarships were scarce and the money scarcer. So he bet on himself. He took out loans, stacked part-time jobs, and enrolled in the financial engineering program at NYU, where he was the only black student in most of his classes. He learned fast how to dress the part, talk the lingo, fake confidence in boardrooms that looked nothing like the world he came from. But no matter how much he polished the surface, Elijah couldn't hide the truth. He was still seen as a visitor in their world. At 25, Elijah landed a junior analyst role at Archvale Capital, a boutique hedge fund managing over $18 billion in assets. From the outside, it looked like a dream. Oak-paneled offices, martini-soaked networking events, private elevators. Inside, it was a crucible. He endured subtle digs cloaked as jokes, comments on his eloquence, or how surprisingly articulate he was. They nicknamed him Oracle, not for his brilliance, but because he looked like he came from the Matrix. He laughed when they laughed. He learned not to flinch. But what cut deepest were the moments that weren't jokes. Like when his pitch on minority-owned infrastructure investments was dismissed as philanthropy masquerading as finance. Or when the same idea, recycled and repackaged by a colleague a week later, was praised as visionary. He started noticing things. How clients from historically black colleges were given lower-tier portfolios. How internal memos categorized certain demographics as higher risk without clear data to back it up. How some trades seemed off, and how every time he raised a question, it vanished into bureaucratic fog. Elijah buried his doubts, telling himself he was imagining things. He focused on climbing the ladder, but the higher he went, the more rot he saw. The moment everything changed came on a Thursday afternoon. Elijah had been tasked with analyzing a new algorithm Archvale used to allocate asset exposure across emerging markets. The math didn't add up. He found a pattern, a skew in the algorithm that disproportionately devalued portfolios with minority-owned or community-based assets. He flagged it to his manager. The next morning, the file disappeared from the share drive. IT logs were scrubbed. His manager claimed ignorance. That night, Elijah copied what he could onto a private drive and took it home. He didn't know what he was looking for, only that something was wrong. Something big. The more he dug, the clearer it became. Archvale, and possibly others, had built financial models that actively penalized portfolios tied to Black-owned businesses, community credit unions, and minority-led startups. Not overtly, not in ways that screamed racism, but through algorithmic weightings, risk coefficients, and market sentiment filters that subtly but decisively diverted billions away from underserved communities. It was systemic, it was profitable, and it was intentional. Elijah wasn't reckless. He knew whistleblowing could end his career, or worse. So he confided in the one person he trusted in the firm, Kennedy Walsh, a senior partner and the only woman who'd ever mentored him without condescension. She listened. She asked the right questions. She encouraged him to collect more proof. 2 weeks later, she forwarded the evidence, his evidence, to compliance under her own name. The firm issued a statement lauding her bravery for uncovering a legacy code discrepancy and swiftly promoted her to managing director. Elijah was fired 3 days later. No severance, no explanation, just a signed NDA, a box of his things, and a warning. Pursuing this further isn't in your best interest. He couldn't get work. Wall Street's Whisper network moved faster than facts. He was blacklisted, branded a troublemaker. Interviews dried up. Calls stopped coming. Rent piled up. Friends drifted. He sold his suits. Moved back to Bed-Stuy. Took freelance gigs, teaching math online. On some nights, he'd walk past the brownstones of Fort Greene and wonder how he'd ever imagined belonging in their world. But he couldn't let it go. The data haunted him. So did the silence. If this was happening at Archvale, how many other firms were doing the same? And how many lives have been quietly stifled in the name of statistical objectivity? He started compiling everything: documents, code samples, internal emails. He coded a prototype tool that could identify biased trading behavior across various funds and institutions. He called it Blacklight. In the winter of 2023, Elijah launched a Substack under the pseudonym Blackwant. His first expose broke down how predictive analytics were weaponized against Black communities in everything from small business loans to stock options. It went viral overnight. He followed with detailed reports on fund allocation disparities, real estate redlining in digital investment platforms, and algorithmic laundering of racial data. Academics reached out. Activists rallied behind him. Lawyers offered pro bono support. And then Wall Street noticed. Suddenly, his name was back in the headlines, not as a disgraced analyst, but as a whistleblower exposing one of the largest financial discrimination scandals of the decade. But with visibility came danger. He began receiving anonymous emails. Watch yourself. You don't know what you're playing with. And one that simply read, "Silence has value. So does disappearance." Back in that dimly lit apartment, Elijah looked out the window and caught a glimpse of the idling sedan. He didn't panic. Not yet. He reached for a flash drive, Blacklight's newest version, and tucked it inside the hollowed-out base of an old chess trophy on his desk. He knew they were coming, and he had one last move left. The screen flickered, loading a secure server. The final file upload hovered at 92%. He whispered to himself, a mantra carved from years of betrayal and buried rage. They built this system to erase us quietly. But I'm done being quiet. Behind him, the doorknob turned. When the truth threatens power, the system doesn't just fight back, it hunts. The door creaked open with a slow, deliberate drag. Elijah Merrick didn't turn around. He clicked once more on the screen, 93%. Then reached for his phone to activate a backup upload, his finger trembling just slightly. The apartment silence was devoured by the hum of the hard drive and the faint, metallic whine of the elevator door groaning shut behind whoever had just entered. Elijah, a low voice called. Not hostile, not friendly, just empty. He finally turned. A tall figure stood in the doorway, clean-shaven, dressed in NYPD blues, badge number partially obscured by a windbreaker. The nameplate read D. Richter. I need you to come with me. For what? Tampering with private financial systems. Unauthorized data possession. Potential corporate espionage. The hard drive clicked again. 94%. The sun had barely cracked the edge of the skyline when Elijah stepped into a Bronx community center, clutching a small laptop bag like it was made of glass. The center was running a financial literacy seminar, but he wasn't there to teach. He was there to upload. The last few
Days have been a blur of burner phones, encrypted servers, and disappearing files. Someone, maybe a rogue actor inside Archvale, maybe someone higher, was attempting to purge every trace of his expose. His server in Iceland had been taken offline mysteriously. His backup files were corrupted. Every upload he'd made to open source platforms was flagged with digital takedowns for intellectual property violations. Someone powerful didn't want the public to see blacklight, so he went underground. He used public Wi-Fi from libraries, subway stations, and coffee shops in outer boroughs. Any place without cameras. Always moving, always watching. But that morning, something different happened. A stranger, young Latina, no older than 20, slipped him a note during a brief exchange at the seminar. Don't go home. They're watching. Contact JA 646 XXX XXXX. He didn't know who Jay was, but he'd learned to listen to whispers from the margins. They were often louder than megaphones in high places. Back in his apartment, the officer's voice broke the tension like a blunt object. I've got a warrant. You can come quietly or not. Up to you. Elijah didn't resist. He made sure his hand brushed the keyboard one last time. Send backup file before slipping into the cold grip of the officer's cuffs. They didn't take him to the local precinct. Instead, they drove downtown. The silence in the cruiser was deafening. You know what this is. Elijah said finally, "You're a pawn." Richter didn't respond, but the flicker in his jaw said everything. When they arrived at the Manhattan Municipal Court, Elijah was met not with a holding cell, but hearing room already packed, with lawyers he didn't know, a judge with eyes like polished glass, and a court reporter who wouldn't make eye contact. He scanned the documents laid out before him. Charges, data theft, cyber trespass, securities interference, defamation. The prosecutor, a corporate lawyer named Eric Salton, was once rumored to be the legal pit bull of Archvale's private affairs unit. Now, somehow, he was acting with city jurisdiction. This wasn't the case. It was a crucifixion. "We have evidence," Salton said, his voice as oily as a hedge fund prospectus, "that Mr. Merrick has unlawfully accessed proprietary data systems belonging to multiple financial institutions and maliciously distributed doctored information designed to provoke public unrest and cause economic disruption." Objection! Elijah's court-appointed attorney barked, but it was a weak note. The man hadn't even asked Elijah for his full story yet. The judge, a gray-bearded relic named Harold Connolly, barely looked up. "Let's proceed." Elijah rose. "Your Honor, I request time to secure my own representation. These charges are not only false but retaliatory. I'm a whistleblower. I have the evidence." "You'll have your time," Connolly cut in. "For now, I'm granting a temporary gag order and authorizing pretrial detention." A low murmur rippled through the small gallery. "Detention?" Elijah repeated. "On nonviolent white-collar charges." Connolly's gavel slammed down like thunder. "This court finds a potential for digital tampering and further illegal distribution of sensitive material to be a threat. You'll be remanded pending full review." Elijah was stunned. They weren't trying to beat him in court. They were trying to erase him before he ever got there. He didn't sleep that night. The walls of Rikers Island were not made for someone like him. Not because he was better, but because he was invisible. To the guards, to the system, even to the cellmate who snored like an engine. But inside, his brain stayed sharp. He knew they'd tried to silence him. But he also knew blacklight had been triggered. That backup file, tucked into a cloud server he'd hidden beneath layers of academic encryption and off-chain data caches, was set to go live in 72 hours unless manually disabled. He had 3 days. On the second day, Elijah was summoned to a private visitor room. He half expected Kennedy Walsh, the woman who'd stolen his research and built a promotion off his betrayal. Instead, he found a young, fast-talking black woman dressed in a trench coat, gold nose ring glinting in the fluorescent light. "I'm Janelle Aduba," she said. "J.A., how do I know you're not another plant?" She smiled faintly. Because your blacklight server pinged one of my watchdog channels before it went down. I'm a digital forensic analyst. Used to work with the SEC. Now I freelance for groups that don't get invited to Davos. Elijah's breath slowed. Someone's going to kill this file if you don't get out and verify the release protocol, she said. You set up a triple authentication firewall. One's already compromised. You got about 30 hours before the upload dies and takes everything with it. He exhaled. Then I need to get out. She nodded. I'm working on it. But you should know your Judge Conley? He used to sit on the board of Apex Trust Management. Elijah's eyes widened. Apex was one of the firms named in his fourth report, and they've been directly benefiting from the algorithmic discrimination Blacklight had uncovered. So the judge has a conflict of interest. No, she said. He has a motive. Back in his cell, Elijah replayed the past few years like a cracked reel. Every moment of silence, every betrayal. He thought about the unpaid student loans, the mounting credit card debt he'd once hidden from even himself, the eviction notice that had hovered just 2 weeks away when he first launched BlackQuant, the GoFundMe accounts he watched other whistleblowers post in shame, virtual begging bowls in a world that praised justice but never paid for it. He thought about Andre, his college roommate, who dropped out after being denied a private loan because algorithmic models flagged his zip code as high risk. About Shayla, the woman he once loved, who left after her savings were wiped in a predatory home refi targeting urban redevelopment zones. They hadn't just weaponized finance. They'd made poverty the software and skin color the key variable. Late that night, Janelle returned, this time with the news. You're getting out, she said, sliding him a file through a legal folder. Elaborate. We filed a habeas petition in federal court on civil rights grounds. Judge Tanaka just ordered a temporary release pending review. I'll be out by 6 hours, maybe less, but they'll be watching. He didn't ask who they were anymore. He stepped into the cold night with nothing but the clothes on his back, and a burner phone slipped into his coat. Janelle picked him up in a rusted Subaru 2 blocks away. The GPS was disabled. The radio played only static. Where to? She asked. There's a woman, Leona Mallory. She runs a black community bank in Newark. She's been waiting on the Blacklight report to make her next move. Janelle raised an eyebrow. You trust her? She marched with my mother. That's enough. By 11 p.m., they'd reached a warehouse on the edge of Newark's ironbound district. Inside, under flickering sodium lights, Elijah opened his laptop and logged into the triple-off firewall. The timer read 5 hours, 44 minutes, and 19 seconds. He uploaded the final file. Encryption keys, forensic breakdowns, source code, a 20-minute narrated video explaining the entire scandal. He tied in data from Apex Trust, Archrail Capital, and 6 other firms. Once I hit send, he said, there's no going back. Janelle nodded. Make sure it lands where they can't bury it. He uploaded the file across 5 decentralized media nodes, 1 NGO leak platform, and the personal inboxes of 25 journalists, 2 senators, and a UN special rapporteur. He hit send. The screen flickered. Upload complete. Then, suddenly, his screen blinked. Unauthorized access detected. Remote wipe initiated. What the hell? He muttered, diving for command line. Someone was trying to wipe his machine in real time. Cut the Wi-Fi, he yelled. Janelle yanked the power to the modem, but it was too late. The file was gone. Corrupted. Overwritten. All except for 1 backup node, still offline, still untouched. A cold storage server housed in a university lab in Baltimore. Elijah looked up. They're already there, Janelle said grimly. They'll shut it down. They reached the edge of the I-95 on-ramp when the phone buzzed again. A new message. No number. Just 1 line. You didn't think we'd let you win, did you? Elijah stared at the screen, jaw tight. The war had just begun. Sometimes, to bring down the castle, all you need is a single, invisible crack. The headlights sliced through the fog like spears. The Subaru's engine coughed as Janelle pushed it past 90 down the I-95. Elijah's knuckles were white against the dashboard, not from speed, but from urgency. They had hours, maybe minutes, before the last copy of Blacklight was scrubbed from existence. The cold storage server, his final ace, was locked in a university lab in Baltimore. It wasn't connected to the internet. It wasn't even labeled under his name. It was quite literally invisible to the world unless you knew exactly what to look for. But someone had found it, and they were closing in. Elijah sat in a dusty, rarely used lab reserved for adjunct professors and late-night grad students. The room buzzed with outdated hardware and the smell of old paperbacks and soldered wires. In a corner, beneath a stack of Ethernet cables and expired grant proposals, sat a rusting tower PC with a flickering power light. Most people ignored it, but Elijah had seen something different: obscurity, the kind that hides things in plain sight. While interning under a little-known professor who'd once blown the whistle on discriminatory healthcare algorithms, Elijah had installed a data node inside the forgotten PC. It was a digital black box hidden beneath layers of decoy files, some labeled Advanced Plumbing Design Simulations, others under cryptic, meaningless acronyms. No IP address, no DNS registry, no open ports, just a physical machine, untouchable unless you were standing right next to it. That day, he uploaded a complete version of Blacklight, algorithms, case files, predictive model flows, everything. It sat there for 2 years dormant, waiting for a moment like this. He'd buried it so deep, even he had almost forgotten. Why Baltimore? Janelle asked, eyes still fixed on the road. It was never about security, Elijah murmured. It was about being unimportant. What's the best way to protect something valuable? Make it look like junk. Janelle cracked a grin. You paranoid genius. Then her smile faded. Wait, what if someone tipped them off inside the university? They'd need a key to decrypt the node, Elijah said. It's locked behind a biometric key store. Biometric? My heartbeat signature. Your what? Long story. Agent Vincent Gray watched the old building from a surveillance van parked behind a row of UPS trucks. He wasn't FBI. Not officially. He was something older, from a department no longer listed in org charts. Gray specialized in digital neutralization, whistleblowers, rogue engineers, data rebels, the quiet war, the kind where there are no medals, only deletions. This the place? Asked the young tech beside him. Yeah, Gray nodded, flipping open a secure laptop. Scrub the subnet. If it pings, fry it. All of it. Inside the van, a digital warhead began to activate. Elijah and Janelle reached the campus by 2:43 a.m. Security was tight. Cameras everywhere. But Janelle had prepped for this. She handed Elijah a pair of deepfake lenses. Contact lenses embedded with infrared jamming tech to confuse facial recognition systems. He blinked. How do I look? Like a white chemistry professor named Leonard who's late to his tenure review. They laughed, but only for a moment. Inside, Elijah navigated the old corridors by memory, left at the vending machine, right past the lab with the broken autoclave, down 3 flights of stairs to the sub-basement. They reached the room. Dust, silence, the faint hum of the old tower PC. It was still there. Elijah dropped to his knees, opened the case, and connected a portable biometric scanner. He pressed his finger, then his wrist. Nothing. Come on. Something's wrong, Janelle whispered. No, Elijah muttered, voice shaking. It's not wrong. It's outdated. The system needs my full biometric pulse wave pattern. It's tied to my stress signature. What does that even mean? I recorded it the night I thought I'd be evicted. My heart rate was off the charts. So we need to scare you? He nodded grimly. Without a word, Janelle grabbed his hand and jabbed a needle into his thigh. What the? Adrenaline shot, she said. You're welcome. Elijah's pulse exploded. The scanner blinked green. Access granted. As he accessed the drive, Elijah saw something he hadn't expected. A second file, timestamp, from months ago. Modified by system admin. He froze. What is it? Janelle asked. This file, I didn't make it. Someone else was here. He clicked it open. Inside was a video message. It was Kennedy Walsh, his former partner, the one who betrayed him. She sat in what looked like a cheap motel, eyes hollow, voice calm. If you're seeing this, I'm either dead or they've silenced me. I couldn't live with what I did. I took your work. Yes, but I found something else. Something bigger. The racism in Wall Street's AI, it's not a bug. It's a design. It's a feature. They're not just feeding old data into algorithms. They're creating new biases from scratch, designing systems to keep black applicants out, lock them into debt, deny their growth, fund private equity takeovers in our neighborhoods. It's called Project Flintlock, run by a coalition of hedge funds, insurers, and data firms. Everything's hidden through shell networks in the Caymans. The real command center? It's offshore, untraceable, but there's one way in. She looked directly into the camera. Look for the metadata in the blue paper report from the Justice Algorithm Summit, 2019. There's a flaw, a typo. That's the back door. I tried to stop them. I failed. You still can. I'm sorry. The screen cut to black. Elijah sat frozen. Everything they'd been fighting was worse than he imagined. He pulled up the 2019 Justice Algorithm Summit report, a 147-page PDF he hadn't looked at in years. He scanned page after page. Then he saw it. Page 118. A footnote referencing a non-existent statute. Title 6E.41. There was no such code in the Civil Rights Act. He ran a search. 6E.41 wasn't a code. It was a coordinate. 6 degrees east, 41 degrees north. The GPS coordinates pointed to Lake Como, Italy. What the hell is in Lake Como? Janelle asked. Elijah looked up. Probably the most expensive lie on earth. Suddenly, the screen flashed red. Unauthorized access detected. Signal trace initiated. Gray had found them. Move! Janelle screamed. They bolted out of the lab as the computer sparked, fried by a surge pulse sent remotely. Behind them, sirens began to wail. They ran through campus, cutting between buildings, ducking under fences. Gray's team followed. 3 black SUVs moving with surgical precision. Elijah and Janelle made it to the street just in time for a passing garbage truck to block the view. They dove into an alley, hearts pounding. They were alive. Barely. But now they had the map. Not to the system's weakness, to its core. Back in the van, Gray seethed. They found the coordinate, the tech said. Gray didn't blink. Then it's time we go international. He picked up a phone. Activate protocol nightfall. Full authorization. No more leaks. The voice on the other end replied coldly. Even if it means exposure? Gray's eyes narrowed, especially then. Elijah stood under the hazy dawn sky, the pale pink light reflecting off the still waters of Lake Como. He wasn't here for the scenery. The GPS coordinates buried in the Justice Algorithm Summit report had led him to a secluded peninsula dotted with old stone villas and well-manicured silence. But nestled among them, nearly invisible on satellite imagery, was a fortress-like estate built into the hillside. No signs, no road markers. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, it was the nerve center of a shadow network spanning finance policy and predictive data. Project Flintlock, the global operation that codified racism into machine learning, that gave banks, insurers, and real estate giants a scientific excuse to shut out millions based on digital redlining. What Elijah had uncovered wasn't just corrupt code. It was a profitable design. Janelle adjusted the lenses of her modified AR glasses. Thermal imaging shows 10 guards. No obvious security cams. This place is off-grid, Elijah said. They're hiding something nuclear. He looked over at the man beside them, Giovanni Sardi, a disgraced former data broker turned reluctant ally. He once built AI models for the very cabal they were hunting. Now he wanted revenge. This estate isn't just a command center, Sardi whispered. It's a vault. Every transaction, every shadow contract, stored on a quantum encrypted drive. You get in, you get everything. And the back door? Sardi smiled grimly. It's inside the art. They entered the estate posing as restoration consultants, an alibi arranged by Sardi using an alias and a forged invitation to a private showing of the owner's 17th century oil paintings. In the parlor, surrounded by absurd wealth, Elijah found it, a massive Renaissance painting hanging crooked above a stone fireplace. It was a counterfeit, not of the art, but the frame. Sardi stepped forward, feeling the ridges in the molding. With a gentle push, the frame clicked forward and revealed a biometric reader disguised beneath the gilded border. Who does it belong to? Elijah asked. The real architect, Sardi said. His name doesn't appear on any record, but he's the one who designed Flintlock. They call him the actuary. Elijah stared at the reader, heart pounding. How do we beat it? We don't, Sardi said. We fake it. He handed Elijah a thin silicon glove, loaded with harvested biometric data, lifted during a financial tech summit using a portable handshake scanner. The thumbprint matched the actuary's. It worked. The wall behind the fireplace slid open. Behind it, a small cold room held a single machine, sleek, silver, silent. A quantum storage drive pulsed slowly like a heart. The data contained inside, the spine of a trillion-dollar conspiracy. Elijah connected a remote relay to upload the contents. Janelle stared at the data flow, mouth slightly open. This isn't just financial models. This is everything. Everything, Elijah confirmed. Their offshore accounts, policy influence maps, blackmail archives, internal audio logs, all of it. As the download progressed, Elijah noticed a peculiar file, revision_0, ethos_packet, PDF. Unlike the others, it was encrypted with a legacy cipher, odd for a modern system. When decrypted, it revealed something chilling, an internal pact, not just among hedge funds, but involving elected officials, Supreme Court aides, and technology reviewers from major outlets. It laid out a strategy to roll back economic mobility on the guise of AI-powered neutrality, targeting minority communities with precision-based financial containment. The goal? Preserve the balance of market advantage while projecting inclusivity through controllable figureheads and minority-owned decoy firms. Even the recent rise of black VC funds and diversity-focused accelerators, some were shells designed to absorb rebellion and redirect it. Janelle's hands shook. They're playing chess with lives. Elijah backed up the entire drive. If this gets out, the economy will explode, Sardi warned. You won't just have enemies. You'll be marked for extermination. Elijah smiled faintly. Then let's change the rules of the game. Elijah couldn't publish the leak. Not yet. The data will be suppressed, discredited, or buried in bureaucratic smog. He needed a new angle, so he built one. With Sardi and Janelle's help, Elijah established a low-visibility financial entity in the British Virgin Islands, Black Shield Capital. Using the Flintlock Vault's playbook, they mirrored the hedge fund's tactics, but flipped the strategy. Instead of redlining, they used predictive models to find neglected neighborhoods with high potential, communities systemically denied funding despite proven output. Instead of denying credit, they created micro-lending algorithms tailored to local economic patterns, empowering barbershops, food trucks, app startups, and mechanic garages. Instead of hoarding wealth, they funneled it back, not as charity, but as co-owned equity vehicles with automatic reinvestment clauses. Their early investors? Sardi's old rivals, who thought they were buying into another shadow hedge. They didn't know they were bankrolling a quiet economic revolution. Within the first year, Black Shield Capital had grown $3.4 million into $28 million through a mix of microloans, property flips, and agile trading guided by AI models Elijah had rewired to correct for racial bias. The growth was slow, but deliberate, sustainable, and because it looked like a hedge fund, the system didn't blink. Even the IRS didn't notice. Janelle managed PR invisibility. Sardi faked regulatory filings. Elijah stayed in the shadows, his name never once associated with the firm, until requests came in from a black startup in Detroit, a young founder, Alonzo, who'd just been rejected by 6 banks despite stellar metrics. His app predicted energy waste in low-income housing. Elijah approved a $120,000 microloan. 2 months later, Alonzo's app landed a deal with Michigan's Department of Housing. It made $2 million in 90 days. The startup donated half to a community solar grid. The model worked. Word began to spread underground, quietly, like whispers in a storm. 3 months later, a financial watchdog blog received an anonymous tip. Follow the money behind Black Shield. It's not what it seems. The next morning, one of Black Shield's shell accounts was frozen by an offshore banking partner. Then the Cayman branch was flagged for audit. Then Sardi was nearly run off the road. Someone had found them. Too fast, Elijah muttered. Someone inside Flintlock knows what we're doing. He pulled up access logs. There it was, a silent ping from an unknown user inside a Dubai server cluster. The user ID? Actuary_0001. Janelle's eyes widened. I thought you said he was a ghost. I did, Elijah said, but it looks like he's watching us now. Using a facial match algorithm from the leaked Vault archives, Elijah reverse-engineered a low-res security feed that had caught the actuary's image for 0.8 seconds during a 2014 private summit in Davos. It wasn't what he expected. The actuary, code name of the Flintlock creator, wasn't some shadowy white financier. He was black, mid-40s, Senegalese-American, former AI ethics professor, brilliant, untraceable. Name, Dr. Adewale Temiteo. According to the records, he'd vanished in 2015, presumed dead in a boating accident off the coast of Ghana. But Elijah now knew the truth. He hadn't died. He'd simply switched sides. A black man had created the system that oppressed his own. Janelle looked at Elijah. Why would he do it? Elijah stared at the data. Maybe he believed the system couldn't be beaten, only bent. Then the message came, encrypted, authenticated, undeniably real. Sender, Adewale Temiteo. Subject, you've done well. Meet me. Location, Johannesburg. 1 week. Below is a line of text. I designed a maze, but you started to draw a new one. Perhaps it's time we compare notes. Elijah read it again. Adewale wasn't just watching. He wanted to talk. Elijah stood on the balcony of a nondescript Johannesburg hotel, staring out the skyline as a private car waited below. In his pocket was a burner phone, a plane ticket, and the master key to the largest financial algorithmic vault in history. Next to him, Janelle folded her arms. Are you sure this isn't a trap? No, Elijah said. I know it is, but I'm going anyway. The car moved in silence through a city vibrating with rhythms both ancient and electric. Skyscrapers loomed beside centuries-old townships. Johannesburg was a contradiction in motion, the perfect meeting ground for ghosts who had once tried to reshape the world. Elijah wore no disguise this time. He wanted Adewale to see him, to know he was ready. The boy raised on eviction notices and insulted by bankers had become the man staring into the algorithm's heart. The meeting place was a private rooftop garden atop a corporate tower that bore no logos. It wasn't listed on Google Maps. There were no guards, just a biometric scanner that opened once Elijah placed his palm upon the glass. He stepped inside. Adewale Temiteo stood beside a bonsai tree, gazing at the city below, dressed not in the garb of a villain, but in a gray tailored suit, timeless and minimalist. The man exuded a silent power, like a conductor moments before raising the baton. Elijah, Adewale said, voice as smooth as old jazz. You weren't supposed to find me. Elijah didn't blink. You weren't supposed to exist. Adewale smiled faintly. And yet here we are. Adewale poured 2 glasses of hibiscus tea. No guards, no cameras, just 2 minds shaped by different nightmares. Why? Elijah finally asked. You built a system that financially lynched your people. Adewale didn't react with anger, only a weary acceptance. I tried to fix it from the inside, he said. I was part of Obama's AI ethics initiative. But when the billionaires came knocking, they didn't want equality. They wanted predictability. They wanted models that maintained their margins. So you gave it to them? Adewale looked Elijah in the eye. I gave him a rope and watched them hang themselves. That was a twist Elijah hadn't seen coming. Adewale hadn't simply betrayed black communities. He had documented everything. Over a decade, he had collected enough evidence to collapse the very empire he built. But you disappeared, Elijah said. You could expose them. Not without a proxy, Adewale said. Someone untouched by compromise. Someone like you. And that's when Elijah realized he was the backup plan. Adewale handed Elijah a quantum USB device. Inside is the Ghost Protocol, he said. A trigger script embedded in every Flintlock partner's infrastructure. If you activate it, their entire predictive engine resets to its unbiased baseline. That could crash the entire stock market, Elijah whispered. No, Adewale said. It would crash their market, the one built on illusions. Elijah weighed it in his hand. With one upload, he could reroute decades of capital back toward the communities that had been left behind. But it came with a price. Flintlock would fight back, and so would the old enemies who had once buried him. Elijah returned to the U.S. under an alias. Black Shield Capital had gone dark. The Flintlock banks had closed in. The DOJ had been sent bogus evidence, implicating Black Shield in money laundering. They froze $18 million in assets overnight. Worse, a sealed indictment had been leaked to the press, accusing Elijah of cyber terrorism. Janelle was livid. They're using the law as a weapon. Again, Elijah knew what had to be done. He arranged a public hearing before the Financial Oversight Committee, not as a defendant, but as a whistleblower. The moment the committee chair recognized him, murmurs erupted. Mr. Elijah Ramsey, you understand you're under investigation? I do, Elijah said, but I'm not here to plead. I'm here to testify. He plugged in the quantum USB and began the presentation that would shatter reputation, careers, and billion-dollar secrets. With calm precision, Elijah revealed encrypted financial models coded with race and zip-based bias, leaked memos from top hedge funds celebrating containment zones, audio of a Supreme Court clerk discussing algorithmic bias litigation strategies with Flintlock lobbyists, tax returns showing shadow donations to decoy black-owned firms created to launder credibility. And then he dropped the final bomb. I present to you a live simulation of the Ghost Protocol. The committee screens filled with real-time data, banks losing predictive advantage, redlined areas lighting up as investment safe, funding approvals flipping toward disenfranchised neighborhoods. Wall Street watched in horror. America watched in awe. After the hearing, the betrayal brigade lined up. Jeremiah Maddox, the bank VP who once denied Elijah's mother a mortgage. Vanessa Cormick, the ex-lover turned informant. Judge Kessler, who once ruled against Elijah in a lawsuit involving data discrimination. They had come to gloat. Instead, they saw Elijah walking out, not in handcuffs but flanked by media, his name now synonymous with the greatest financial whistleblowing acts in Snowden. Maddox called after him. You think you won? They'll bury you in red tape. Elijah turned. Let them try. I know where the bones are buried. That night, Elijah received a call. A child's voice. Warped, masked. You made your move, the voice said. But Adewale wasn't the only architect. Who is this? Elijah asked. A pause. We have a copy of the protocol, and we're not using it for justice. We're using it for power. Then silence. Elijah stared at the phone. He hadn't destroyed Flintlock. He just triggered a war over who would control its future. Elijah Ramsey stood at the glass balcony of the newly reopened Citadel Equinox building in Canary Wharf. The skyline, once a symbol of exclusion, now served as a vantage point from which he surveyed a power that was once weaponized against him. Below him, a bustling new financial district buzzed with executives, entrepreneurs, and developers, many of them black, brown, and indigenous, many of them beneficiaries of the Ghost Protocol's aftermath. The global financial map had been redrawn. Elijah hadn't just exposed the corruption of Flintlock, he had reprogrammed the game. After the congressional hearing, Elijah found himself a media lightning rod. Interviews poured in, book deals, panel invites. Think tanks formed around his insights. But Elijah turned it all down. Instead, he focused on what he'd always wanted, sustainable economic power for his people. With the Ghost Protocol active, the AI systems of the world's top 30 financial institutions had defaulted to a raw, bias-free logic. The economic rebound in marginalized communities was swift and staggering. Loans were being approved in neighborhoods once considered investment dead zones. Black-owned businesses saw a 72% spike in capital access. Generational wealth began transferring not through inheritance, but through innovation. Elijah launched the Archetype Fund with Janelle and a core team of data scientists and social economists. Its purpose? To seed undercapitalized entrepreneurs, to partner with AI watchdogs, to create a new ecosystem, one where code served justice, not greed. The first quarter alone saw returns that embarrassed Wall Street. And with that wealth came new power. Not loud power, not corruptible power, but the kind of influence that builds schools, funds black blockchain initiatives, and rewires entire economies. But peace never lasts long. Weeks after launching Archetype, Elijah was served a digital summons. A lawsuit was filed under the name of a shadowy hedge collective known as Obelisk. They weren't just Flintlock leftovers. They were its creators. These weren't people you could find in boardrooms. They lived in the hidden web, operated through shell firms and quantum-coded private ledgers. Billionaires in exile, rogue states. Even tech CEOs who had publicly supported Elijah were secretly tied to Obelisk's infrastructure. The lawsuit was merely a distraction. Their true play was control. Obelisk had launched a forked version of the Ghost Protocol, called Dominion. Unlike Elijah's release, which made bias transparent, Dominion embedded it deeper, allowing its users to appear fair while continuing to exploit data asymmetry. The public didn't notice. The markets began to shift back, and Elijah realized if Dominion took hold, they'd lose everything they'd fought for. Elijah moved underground. No more TV appearances, no more speeches, just code, alliances, and countermeasures. He and Janelle built a decentralized resistance protocol called Mirror Chain. It was like a blockchain but mirrored every major financial institution's transactions, seeking out inconsistencies and pattern-based discrimination. Every time a mortgage was denied based on biased parameters, every time a credit score model coincidentally disqualified applicants from certain zip codes, Mirror Chain exposed it in real time. They released it anonymously. Overnight, banks found themselves accountable to an incorruptible public ledger. Obelisk retaliated by hiring ex-military cybersecurity teams. But Elijah had one more ace up his sleeve. Rather than fight in traditional courts, Elijah proposed a public trial on-chain. They called it the Ledger Hearing. Tens of millions watched online as Mirror Chain reconstructed the origins of Dominion using metadata and secret contracts embedded in its code. Then came the bombshell. One of Obelisk's founders was none other than federal Judge Kessler, the same man who once ruled against Elijah during his lowest point. The documents were clear. Kessler had received crypto payments, coordinated with offshore AI developers, and rewritten bias laws behind closed doors. His reputation collapsed instantly. The judicial system was forced to review hundreds of his past decisions. Obelisk scrambled. Its assets were seized by international coalitions. Dominion was dismantled. Elijah never touched a gun, never made a threat. He dismantled empires with truth, transparency, and technology. And when asked why he didn't take $1 billion payout to retire in peace, he simply said, "We're not done. I wasn't here just to win. I was here to rewrite the script." Archetype Fund was now a $12 billion impact powerhouse. It had seeded the first African-led quantum computing initiative, a free legal AI assistant for those fighting systemic injustice. Public finance DAOs in Detroit, Accra, Kingston, and Atlanta. Children once labeled by flawed algorithms were now being funded to build the next wave of innovation. And Elijah, he no longer wore hoodies or ran from police sirens. He wore custom neural weave suits, walked into Davos with purpose, and dictated terms to the same institutions that once dismissed him. He even made a surprise appearance on Bloomberg Live. When asked what advice he had for young people coming up, don't just play the game. Study it, break it apart. Find the cheat codes hidden in plain sight. The systems built to exclude us are only powerful until we understand them. And then they fear us. As Elijah stood backstage at the UN Blockchain Summit, a man approached him. The stranger handed him a metal case. "From Adewale," he said. "He's still alive. He found the last piece of the Flintlock root code. It predates even Dominion." Inside the case, a drive, a map, a warning. There's one more protocol, and this one wasn't built by us. Elijah raised his eyes to the horizon. The game wasn't over. Resilience isn't about bouncing back. It's about bouncing forward, using pain as propulsion. Smart financial moves start with financial literacy. Knowledge is wealth before the money ever arrives. Code is law in the modern world. Learn it, master it, and you can reshape your reality. Never underestimate the power of exposure. Systems thrive in silence. Shine a light and you shift power. Redemption isn't given. It's built line by line, block by block, truth by inconvenient truth. Comment below, what would you do with the Ghost Protocol? Subscribe for the next story that reveals what they tried to keep hidden. Because in this world, the truth has teeth.